The HACKney carriage, hacking health across London with me, Salka from Appeal World ACV, learning from the experts.
Fasting kills me. People talk about fasting like it is a cure-all and a fix-all.
Let's talk about the effects of high blood sugar, not just in the short term, but the long term.
And it's really empowering when you feel the difference.
The field of medicine is moving beyond the prescription pad. It's becoming more intuitive, it's becoming holistic.
It feels like there's some symptoms that are really common.
Cool. Cheers.
Well, cheers!
Lovely to meet you.
Well, welcome to the HACKney carriage.
Thank you. It's an honour to be here.
Well, I'm so excited for our conversation.
Me too.
I've deep dived into your book called Smart Foods for ADHD and Brain Health.
Yes.
It's so interesting. And can
Thank
you
you.
tell me about how you started to go into neuroscience and specialising in ADHD? How did that all
Absolutely.
begin?
Gosh, it's been such a journey. It started out me being a young first-time mum, working on Abbey Road in St John's Wood. Had a wonderful career. Literally, our office was right by the EMI recording studios, so I got to know a lot of people there, a lot of producers, and went to some fabulous parties. So for I was in my early 20s. Or mid 20s actually, but so basically my son kept getting into trouble at school. He was at a school called Abercorn Place, which is a small school just off Abbey Road, and I kept getting phone calls to come in and pick him up or have meetings, and he was being too chatty or fidgety or not paying attention.
How old was he?
He was like 4 or 5.
Okay.
So he was very little. I just thought it was part of his playful personality. He had lots of energy, he was very athletic, always out, sort of, either on his bike or climbing trees, things like that. And anyway, the behaviour continued to the point where I was kind of asked to quietly remove him from the school, which was very upsetting. And then began the journey sort of a couple of years later in terms of what was going on. He did display some behaviour which was noticeably age inappropriate, so his behaviour stood out from his peers. He was a little bit too hyper, a little bit too boisterous, and then after several assessments from a clinical psychologist and educational psychologist, child analyst psychiatrist, he got diagnosed with dyslexia and ADHD.
So the psychiatrist, because there's only a few people that can diagnose ADHD.
Yes.
That needs to be someone that's specific for that. So
Yes.
clinical psychologist.
That's right. Clinical psychologist or child and adolescent psychiatrist.
Okay.
Ideally someone who specialises in ADHD,
Yeah.
because ADHD is often misdiagnosed. The symptoms can be similar to other conditions.
Yeah.
You have to be really careful, really thorough.
So what are
Yeah.
the common symptoms?
Yeah, so inattentiveness. So really struggling to pay attention for any period of time, especially for a child in a classroom when the topic is not of particular interest. So that's hard, sustaining attention when it's maybe a little bit monotonous, a bit dull, the subject matter isn't engaging, because children with ADHD can actually pay attention really well.
Yeah.
Yes,
Very
it's a little
much.
bit of a...
Yeah, because I don't know much about ADHD, but I'm
Yes.
learning more now.
Yes.
And it feels like there's some symptoms that are really common. But are there difference from boys and girls? Is there boys are more hyper, and is there any difference of the symptoms?
There can be, absolutely. So inattentiveness is just one symptom.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So inattentiveness is just one symptom. In my son's case, he also presented with the hyperactive impulsive subtype. So he was combined. So he was inattentiveness plus hyperactive impulsive, which is ADHD, because just inattentiveness alone is ADD, attention deficit disorder.
Yes.
So girls can present more with the ADD subtype, kind of daydreaming, not really paying attention in the classroom. But because their behaviour is quite covert, so it's kind of concealed, it's not obvious, they tend not to be kind of identified and diagnosed or referred as quickly as their male counterparts.
Is it in genetics, and you can trigger it, or is it something you can also get away? Is it something you can go, without, and then all of a sudden it appears later in your life, or?
Yeah. There is not one single gene for ADHD. There are lots of genes. Several of the genes are known to impact pathways, the same pathways that nutrition also impacts, like the dopaminergic pathways, for example, the serotonergic pathways. So ADHD is increasingly being recognised as what's called an epigenetic manifestation. So it's a combination of the genes plus the environment. Yeah.
So if you have the genes, but you're in a completely different environment, different lifestyle, you might never get ADHD. Or
I think ADHD can pass through families, and nutrition, for example, which I'm sure we'll come on to, is classified as one of the most robust, so the strongest, epigenetic neuromodulators. So nutrition has the ability at what's called transcriptional levels to silence genes or to activate them.
it's interesting with nutrition.
It's really interesting.
So powerful and how it affects us.
Yes.
And so if you're getting diagnosed with ADHD, what are the first things that you can do to minimize those symptoms and getting a more focused and easier lifestyle? What would be the first thing?
Yeah. I mean, it's very rare that symptoms would go away, for example. So symptoms need to be managed. There are several lines of treatment that are recommended by the NICE guidelines. So that's the National Institute for Clinical Excellence. So basically all psychiatrists and practitioners should subscribe to those guidelines when treating ADHD. So it's a combination they recommend of like psychosocial intervention, like maybe parenting classes if the child is 6 or 7 years of age. Methylphenidate and psychostimulant medication should not be the first line of treatment ever. And
is it?
It is oftentimes, and I think also what's really important is that the field of medicine is moving beyond the prescription pad. It's becoming more integrative, it's becoming holistic, personalised. It's all about, instead of the one size fits all approach, it's now, let's tap into a range of different therapeutic interventions, which may or may not include pharmaceuticals, but a combination. So we need to look at the lifestyle of that patient or individual, and we need to make changes, maybe sometimes subtle changes, in terms of having a balance as well, which is very important. Oftentimes people with ADHD struggle with burnout because they like to take on a lot of projects. They find it hard to say no and to have really strong boundaries. Sometimes it's easier to just say yes, I'll do that, I'd love to do that, and also it could be quite exciting. They're also,
but then the load of work kicks in.
Yes, and also people with ADHD tend to be business leaders, entrepreneurs. They're like, I'm going to start a business in this, I'm going to do this,
And they take risks, which you have to do to get anywhere. You've got to do that. So that can be a really good asset to have. But
absolutely,
knowing how to navigate your health is so important.
Sure.
When I started reading your book, one of the first thing I did was ran to the pharmacy and got some really good quality omega-3. Can you tell us about omega-3 and what it does and the importance of implementing that into your lifestyle?
Absolutely. It's kind of a question, not a trick question, but it's a question I love to ask, like, what is your brain made of? Because oftentimes people don't have the answer. They'll say things like water, and of course, that is included, but the dry weight, so the non-aqueous weight of the adult brain and retina, is made up of these complex, specialised fats called lipids. And at least 20 to 25% of all neuronal membranes, all brain cells, are made up of this omega-3 fat called, long word, docosahexaenoic
That's a long word,
The easy word is DHA.
Yeah, that's how I'm going to refer to it.
And it's really important to feed the brain the nutritional fuel that it's comprised of. That's really critical.
I had no idea the brain was built of so much fat. I had no idea. Because I've learned that really good fat is so important. Actually, from Debbie Taylor with the MCT oil, it's really good for your brain chemistry.
Absolutely.
And what we feed ourselves is direct link to our brain health.
Absolutely.
And also in your book, you're talking about the gut and brain axis, the gut and brain barrier. Is that it's becoming more and more in topic now? Has that been a long around for a long time, or has been a study that it now shows that link much clearer?
Yeah, I think certainly over the past decade, or come up to 2 decades probably now, with the discovery of the vagus nerve, the long wandering.
Yeah, exactly. Important. Yeah.
And the fact that we now know that serotonin, the hormone we need to have that kind of stable contentment, I call it stable serotonin, not like the highs and lows of dopamine, which we all manipulate to great lengths. So stable serotonin, 90% is made in the gut and then transported via the vagus nerve into the brain. So we know that gut health is critical for brain health.
Yeah, but I find that really motivating, that what you feed yourself goes directly to how you feel, like mentally, because sometimes it feels that it's just superficial, but it's not. It's not about just looking good, it's about feeling good.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the main motivation to make sure we're making choices that you'll have a good day. I mean, I didn't know about this, but now I'm getting more into this, and I can really see the links of if I have something. I mean, I'm very passionate about glucose, and I'm sure that affects ADHD a lot, and I would love to get into that because you mentioned about sugar in there. And if I would have a lot of fructose or sugar or carbs, without the protein and good fats, my days will be ruined. I think some people can manage it better. We're all metabolized in different ways. My husband, he can have a pan of rice in the morning and he'll just have energy throughout the day. He can do that. I can't. I just go down on a low mood, low energy for the rest of the day. But how does sugar and dyes, that chemical impact? It's
so interesting. I don't know if I mentioned, but for the last 7 years I've been collecting data from families all over the UK. And so I have this wealth of data. We have all the kind of nutritional data, which includes children going off to a qualified phlebotomist and having a blood draw, and then what we do is we measure what I refer to as brain selective nutrients. So each nutrient has a recommended reference interval or range, so every person should try to be having an intake of that particular nutrient within that range. Normative values, if you like. So we've been collecting data on things like iron and iodine and magnesium and selenium and omega-3 fatty acids, B vitamins. We've also been looking at food intolerances and food allergies, which is really important because oftentimes what I find in my clinic is that children are eating the very foods that they're intolerant to, and they're also overrepresented in terms of being what's called food avoidant and food restrictive. So children with autism or ASD type traits, for example, and ADHD, sometimes they don't like sort of fruits, vegetables, meats to be touching on a plate, to the point where they refuse to eat the dinner if the potatoes are touching the chicken or whatever.
But they would eat everything just as long as they're not touching.
Yes.
Is that why I've seen those like children's plates where everything has its own hole where you
exactly that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So children with ADHD can be very fussy eaters and known to be fussy eaters, and I think it's a really interesting relationship because one, they gravitate towards the kind of the beige foods, or the white foods. They love the white rice and the white chicken nuggets and the French fries and all the rest of it.
I mean, who doesn't? I mean, who doesn't like carbs? We do like that, don't we?
There are different types of carbs. Yeah, there are different types of carbs. But obviously, if that's all you're eating every single day habitually for year in, year out, it's going to create, or it's going to basically increase risk for what's called leaky gut syndrome.
Yeah, if you're intolerant to it. Yeah.
Not only if you're intolerant.
Anyway, if you're having too much of that, if you don't have the.
Because what you're doing is you're feeding the dysbiotic or pathogenic gut bacteria. So what's happening is they are over colonizing. So they and then the balance and diversity of your gut flora is mucked up. Essentially, it's imbalanced, and then that can lead to gut dysbiosis. So obviously a range of different foods are critical, especially for young children. It's hard to break that habit. It's very hard to kind of stop the beige foods and then introduce healthier foods.
Do you think it is because that's what they're used to and that's the easiest? I was just thinking, why are children more going for carbs more than like broccoli? Like for me, I think broccoli looks more exciting and looks more fun, but it's because maybe the immediate reward from eating something with carbs, there's like a little bit of a dopamine there.
Well, it's a combination of things. I think you've got to remember as well is that the processed food business is a huge business, and they employ some of the top food scientists and pay them huge salaries to create, you know, the bliss point, the right combination of sweet, savoury, and umami, and essentially that basically activates the reward circuitry of the brain, which is like, oh, this feels good.
Is what children's having.
Drip of dopamine, and it's like, and you want to go back for more, and that's the kind of the binge withdrawal repeat cycle of addiction that can happen not just in children but in adults. It can happen to anyone. And it's like when you habitually, you know, put the same types of foods into your body and they release dopamine, that increases risk for addiction. We know that sugar, for example, activates the reward circuitry of the brain, the ventral striatum, and also in that region you have the highest number of dopaminergic neurons as well. And we know that people with ADHD, oftentimes they'll try and, they're kind of master manipulators of their brain's biochemistry because they're trying to normalize dopaminergic function. So they're trying to increase or regulate their dopamine levels, and that's what they're doing by picking alternatives like junk food, knowing it releases dopamine, or as adults gravitating towards, you know, alcohol, nicotine.
What about caffeine? Is that
caffeine as well? It's a stimulant. It's a stimulant drug.
Good if you have ADHD?
I think it's a great natural way of normalising dopamine. I mean, I love caffeine. I can't start my day without it.
No.
Some people are highly sensitive to caffeine. It can give them the jitters.
Yeah.
You know, their
anxiety, and you can with that.
And there are now mushroom alternatives. Like, there's great, like London Nootropics and other companies that are now creating amazing mushroom coffees without the jitters. So
that's good because
I'm just curious. Sorry,
Yeah.
you've basically described a friend of mine to a certain extent. He's very impulsive.
Who shall remain nameless.
Yeah, hopefully he's not watching. But he's 52 years old.
Okay.
Is that common? Would he be likely to have developed that over a long period, or?
So he may have had...
About 3 weeks ago, he was diagnosed with ADHD.
Oh, well, there you go. So he would have had a lifetime of maybe self-medicating.
Yeah.
There's a huge link. I think it's 50% of people with ADHD can develop substance use disorders.
Right.
So whether that's, you know, becoming alcoholics or becoming addicted to cannabis, cocaine, nicotine, caffeine, marijuana.
Right.
I said cannabis,
Yeah.
I
don't even know.
So there's an increased risk.
Really?
Yeah, and it's the link is dopamine.
Yeah.
It's like trying to normalise brain biochemistry.
Right,
for sure. So I mean, I think it's such a relief. And in fact, Katie Spicer, the journalist, was talking about this in a podcast just the other day. She was basically saying everything now makes sense. She's recently been diagnosed with having ADHD, but she's had sort of problematic relationships with, you know.
It must be such a relief when you get a diagnosis for anything that you've experienced. It can be anything. It's nice to know, and because then you know how to deal with it. But when you've been diagnosed, where do they turn to then? Where is the help then?
Good question. And when my son was diagnosed, there literally wasn't any help at all. I was like banging my head against a brick wall. I felt isolated. I felt terribly vulnerable as a young mom. I felt I was judged. You know, I remember sort of going to one of my son's parties for one of the other moms to say, "Oh, you're the nanny. When are we going to meet his mom?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not the nanny. I am his mom," you know. And then, you know, with my own son, whose behaviour, his ADHD symptoms were quite extreme. Sometimes he wouldn't be invited to the play dates or the birthday parties, and that was really hard as well, because it would be like, oh gosh, you know. So I'd have to like find inventive ways, like having parties at our home, you know, inviting people to us and having the best Halloween parties, and just going all out, and the best birthday parties, so that everyone wanted to come to his birthday parties. But it was really hard, and that's why I set up my charity. Because of the lack of help and support. And I've been running Nutritious Minds as a trust since 2017. We had the initial launch in 2017, and we finally got charitable status in January, so I'm over the moon. We're having an official launch celebration.
When is it? 4th of October?
Yeah, Friday the 4th of October. It's a one-day event at the White Space, which are the Ministry of Sound offices. So it's a day of like expert talks, many of whom have ADHD or ASD themselves or dyslexia. So it's an eclectic mix of people from like neuroscientists to biohackers to musicians to actors. You know, we're really praying that the Right Honourable David Lammy will come down. He's been invited. So David, come down.
Yeah, exactly. I definitely going to be there. I'm really excited.
So what we're going to do?
What we need. We need community events and make this more talked about, because I bet it's quite common.
Yes, and what we're aiming to do, and we've managed to allocate 3 awards already, but we cover the costs of private diagnostic assessments to low-income families, because there's families out there who are on 8-year waiting lists, as we've heard recently, and just cannot afford to go and see someone privately. So we want to kind of bridge that gap, take the pressure off ever so slightly. So we do rely on support and funding to do that, and we also. I run personally an adult ADHD support group in Surrey. It's the last Thursday of every month. So everyone is welcome. It's free. I've been putting on events on various aspects of brain health for 7 years now in collaboration with Lisa Nash. And
that's really cool. I'm really looking forward to seeing that and hearing everyone talking about it. It's really interesting. I wanted to ask you as well, what do you have any I might wait till these guys have moved. They're just having a conversation right outside. Can we ask them? Sorry. Is it okay? We're doing it. Cheers.
Oh my god.
Yeah,
I feel like I'm sweating.
You know, you look good. You look good. No,
okay.
I mean, it's London, it's busy, everyone's doing an interview somewhere. I wanted to ask you because HACKney Carriage is about health hacks around London and discovering from health professionals what you do, because you are focused a lot about your son's health, but what do you do for yourself to feel good every day?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I like to start my day with citrus fruit and filtered water, just to flush out the toxins, feel hydrated, start my day. I'm not a breakfast person, so what I might do is I might have a coffee, but I might have a juice. So I love blended juices. I don't do them too often because they contain lots of fructose, and I try to have like a 70% veggie versus 30% fruit ratio, and I have fruits like the berries, which are full of antioxidants and polyphenols. They're like they literally sort of just boost your brain instantly, and you can feel it. It's wonderful. Your brain's like comes alive. So I might have that, or I'll do like a brunch a bit later on with some scrambled eggs.
Yeah, some good protein there.
Yeah, I should take mushrooms, cherry tomatoes.
What kind of mushrooms?
And just have like maybe a side of smoked salmon occasionally, or some avocado, and then literally I always make sure that I have at least 8 hours sleep. I think it's so important. I take magnesium every day, take omega-3 every day.
What kind of magnesium? Are there different kinds? Or?
Yes. Do you know what? I've forgotten the brand that I take.
No, that's okay. There are like several different kinds, but I don't know which one to take. No.
Yeah, but there's the one I take is great for sleep, and also can help if people have constipation as well and things like that. And
well, that's really good. I mean, sleep is the foundation for everything as well.
It's when our body basically repairs itself. We forget that our body is a self-healing entity. It has the ability to repair from all sorts of things, from traumatic brain injury, from stroke to lots of things.
It's incredible.
It's incredible.
Yeah. No, so that's really good, because I sometimes forget to drink water when I wake up, and I know I really should. So that's one of the things.
I've got a couple of other hacks that I need to fit in. Is that okay?
I would love to know more.
So gratitude is a must for me. I think for everyone's sort of mental health, it's really important to focus on what we do have, like to have what I call an abundant mindset, as opposed to focusing on what we do not have or what we haven't yet obtained, because when we focus on lack, I think you'll get more of that. When we focus on abundance, we get more of that. And I think that helps me stay grounded, stay humble, stay positive. You know, I like to get out in nature and I'll have a little meditation, whether that's ideally like a sunrise or a sunset. You know, I like to be surrounded by trees. I love walks in forests, bathing. You know, the Japanese have been practicing this for centuries. And yeah, that's when I feel at one. I think nature is just incredibly therapeutic. It's literally medicine for the soul, and I think it's really important to take time out of our busy lives just to go for that lovely walk, even if we have to drive to get to the place, you know, and just to take 30 minutes a day and to be in nature, to have your little morning meditation, to get your mind right, and also be careful of the company you keep. I think that's really important as well, because you know, you are the sum of the, you know, they say 5 closest people in your life, and you have to really take time to evaluate those relationships, whether they're colleagues, whether they're friends, even family, you know.
Yeah, that's the thing we can do when we're adults.
Yes.
You know, we can actually choose who we want to have close to us, and it's really important because it should give you energy. And of course, if there's friendship and family, there's you know, everyone goes through things and we're there for each other. But ultimately, it needs to give you energy. And I love that. That's really nice. Yeah. Oh, thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Is there anything else?
I mean, yeah, maybe. I just like that made me think about something with about people, because it's so we are so kind of. I'm Swedish, so whenever I can't speak English, I pull out the Swedish card. So we absorb so much, you know, and especially energies from different people and you know, everything around us. So it's important how much we can shield ourselves and the things we can control. Some things are out of our control, but if we can control it, then I think it's good to act and do that.
I think just setting boundaries as well. In my sort of early 30s, I was very much a people pleaser, kind of I've learned to put boundaries in place. It's very important, because otherwise you are basically increasing your own risk for burnout and poor mental health. Mental health is absolutely everything. I call it brain health, because let's face it, the brain is an organ with biochemical underpinnings.
Right, we need to talk about brain health. You know?
Brain health. Mental health is kind of some imaginary construct. It's like, where is it? And because I'm a neuroscientist, like, you know, I look at the brain. I look at the brain. I can't see mental health. And, you know,
but you can see if you scan it, you can see if there's inflammation. You know, if you have a broken arm, you scan it and you fix it. But when it comes to our mental state, we don't really scan the brain, do we?
And also the brain, you know, we used to think it worked according to regions. It doesn't. It works according to networks, you know, and they have like superhighway networks and that are happening instantaneously without us even realizing. And that's the most important thing about omega-3. Coming back to omega-3 is that, you know, cell signaling, neurotransmission, which underlies all of our everyday thoughts, behavior, action. You know, each neuron, it's estimated we have at least 100 billion, is coated in a myelin sheath, and that sheath is made up of the omega-3 DHA. So what it does is it basically helps, it facilitates faster and more efficient cell signaling, neurotransmission across our brain's networks, and that's super important. We know that children who don't have adequate omega-3, their responses are sluggish and slower. So it's like, for example, I like to tell people, imagine a teacher in a classroom and she's asked a question, one child who has adequate omega-3 has her hand up waiting to deliver the answer, having completely computed the question and is ready to deliver the answer, versus another child with inadequate omega-3 who's still trying to figure out what exactly the question was. So that's the difference on a translational kind of sense.
So interesting. And I've heard of supplements that you should take and the things that are good for you, vitamin D, B12 and vitamin C and omega-3. I knew about omega-3 before, but I never really knew why.
Yeah.
So now I'm going to make sure that I always have that at home. Are you going to buy it, Scott?
I'm going to give it a go. I'll give it a
Can
go.
I also say that, I mean, in terms of like now we've got some sunshine,
Yeah.
but we spend at least kind of 65% of our time in the UK under grey clouds, so we don't get that direct skin exposure to sunlight, and therefore most people in the UK have lower levels of vitamin D or inadequate levels, even bordering on a vitamin D deficiency. And it's important because vitamin D alongside folate, but alongside in particular omega-3, work together in synergy to produce and regulate serotonin, so the stable serotonin again. So if we're not getting sunlight, we're not taking our omega-3s, we're not looking after our brain health. And we've got to understand that these nutrients act in the brain, as I mentioned earlier, at molecular and cellular levels, hence why I call them brain selective nutrients, and we need to be making sure that we've got adequate intakes on a daily basis for optimal brain functioning.
I mean, thank you so much
my
for
pleasure.
joining us in the HACKney carriage.
And I love the drinks.
I'm glad.
They're so delicious.
Yeah,
What have I got here? So I've got
lemon and mint, the
it's
Activate
so
one.
refreshing.
Yeah,
It's delicious.
I got
I'll
the ginger.
Definitely be having more of
Cool.
these.
This bag is yours.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh,
Well,
amazing.
thank you.
Thank you
And
so
yeah,
much.
I can really recommend Smart Foods ADHD for brain health and your nutritious minds.
Yes, the event. So come
yeah.
down and support the charity.
Yeah.
You know, and when you're not alone, that's what I say to any parent of a child with ADHD or autism or dyslexia. You know, there's millions of us out here. There wasn't any help 25 years ago, but there's lots of help now, and there's much better recognition and understanding and acceptance now. And I'm so
Brilliant.
I'm so grateful for that. Yeah.
I'm grateful for the work that you do. It's
Thank you.
absolutely
Thank you so
incredible.
much.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Scott, for
Yeah, thank you,
know,
Scott.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.